Extreme 3D Olaf in Summer Acrylic Nail Art Tutorial by Hotpinkzebrapolish. Hello everybody, in today's video I'm going to show you a Frozen theme design even though it is really hot outside, and it is Olaf in Summer from the summer song that he sings. So he's got his lei on and a grass skirt and a coconut bra, and he's just very excited to find out what snowmen do in summer. So I hope you guys like this design as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well. I'm going to begin with a gradient from a sky blue into just a very small section of of white, and then into a sandy beige. So the white is essentially just to blend the blue to the beige together. So I've got just a little bit of that beige color at the tip. You don't want to do too much. You want the majority of this nail to be that gorgeous blue, but then add just a touch of white just to lighten up the blue a little bit near where it reaches the sand. And then we're going to encase the nail with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure that it is nice and strong. And also, you don't want to do too much thickness with your gradient once you have it perfect. So even if you're doing this and you're using acrylic that you could, sculpt the entire nail with without sacrificing any strength, you might want to just do a clear encapsulation anyhow, just so that if you do have your gradient flawless, you don't take risk of messing it up with the file. So now file the nail into shape. I started out with a coarse bit to remove any bulk, and then I go over it with a finer bit just to smooth out the surface texture and make sure it'll be really easy to work on top of once we get to that point. So now here we go. We're going to begin sculpting Olaf with white acrylic. And as you could see from the little video of this design in the beginning, this nail has a lot of height to it. Like his nose, his carrot nose sticks out really far, and his front lip sticks out, and his sunglasses are out pretty far, and his arms stick out to the side. So to do this, the first thing you're going to want to do is to begin building up his face. So sculpt the first layer down on the nail, and then as it's beginning to set and you want to carve in his mouth, take the tip of your brush, and as you saw, I pushed the acrylic from his lower lip up and kind of like flicked it up and pulled and pushed it up. You're not going to get your finished height off of that first little motion, but you're going to get a lot of it there. So after you've got that, you can also take a dotting tool and help to clean lines up if you want. I at first was using my really big sculpture brush. I say really big, but it's an 8, so it's not really that big. But then I'm going to go through with my 3D brush and really finish it off and add some more details just to that mouth area. Once you have that, I'm going to add, he's got one snowball that's just a smaller one that's for his neck, so I'm going to sculpt that one. You want to make sure that you leave some height on his chin, so don't sculpt that neck area too big. And then I'm going to be adding another little circle of white acrylic for his chest snowball. And then with my dotting tool, I'm going to go back to the face, and I'm going to carve just 3 little holes. They're not all the way through the acrylic or to the bottom, but just 3 little indents for his eyes and his nose. And you're going to see how I did his eyes in just a minute. And if you've ever painted Olaf before, he's got this, it's not very like a black line around his eyes, but he has some very definite shading. So to do that, fill in those holes you created for his eyes with black acrylic. Don't fill them in so that it's flush with the nail, but just like wash inside of it so that it's got a little bit of that color throughout the entire inside of the eyeball with still a hole in the middle. And then add a second layer to that chest snowball, and now I'm going to be filling in his mouth with gray acrylic. You can use whatever color of gray you have, or if you just want to do it with paint, you could skip filling it in with the gray acrylic if you wanted. And then after you have that, you're going to take white acrylic and fill in the eyes. And I know I'm off camera, guys, and I'm so sorry, but you'll see it in just a minute. So you fill in the eyes the rest of the way with white acrylic, which leaves this foggy shadow of the black acrylic that you can see through the white, which makes it look perfect like Olaf's eyes. It turns out so well when you do it that way. And then you're going to take another bigger bead of white acrylic, and you're going to add that for his bottom snowball, just like so, and kind of pat that into place. The one thing I really love about Olaf is that he's not very straight. Like if he had a spine, his chiropractor would be crying because he's always so like tipsied off to one side or the other, which makes his movement so visible just with the shape and the placement of snowballs, which is fantastic and actually a lot of fun to sculpt because you can play around with all these different angles. So as you can see, that middle snowball is not in the middle of the nail, and his head is tipped off to the side, but yet the overall thing seems to be in the middle. So now we're going to take brown acrylic, and we're going to be sculpting his coconut bra, like I said. So just 2 circles right across his chest, and then with some black acrylic, we're going to be sculpting the little coal pieces for his belly button, and then the one right between the coconuts. So now in a nail form backing, we're going to be sculpting Olaf's nose, sunglasses, arms, and lei, as well as his one leg that is sticking up. So I'm going to begin with his nose, and that's, not shockingly, orange acrylic. We're making a really long carrot shape. And then with some black acrylic, just take and place 2 beads down and then pat them out and kind of really gently form them into that sunglass shape. One side was a little too big, so I'm going to swipe some of that acrylic off. And just very carefully do this. You want them to stay separated, at least for the moment, those 2 sides, the 2 lenses. And then after you've got that, then you can just take and connect them with one teeny tiny bit more of black acrylic. So now I'm going to be sculpting his 2 arms with brown acrylic, and these are very, very thin. So as you're working on them, be very cautious that you don't actually, separate them and break the arms in half. Especially when you go to start gluing them into place, you have to be very cautious that you are being very gentle with these skinny little arms. You don't have to make the arms completely straight or make them smooth lines. As you can see, mine are a little bit wavy. That actually adds some extra character to Mr. Olaf. I'm going to go through and just touch them up a little bit more and just kind of work on them a little bit. As the acrylic begins to set up, you might find that it's a little easier to manipulate it and get a more exact shape than when it's super wet, because it'll want to keep spreading out on the nail form backing. So just take your time with it. And then after you have both of those arms in the shape that you want them, you're going to want to just leave them until they're 100% set up. And then for the last thing, we're just going to sculpt a little circle of white acrylic for the leg that is sticking up. And after that white has set up just a minute, you can take and push it in from side to side to give it a little bit more height so it's not quite so thin. So by doing that and pushing it in from the side, you're forcing the acrylic to go up in the middle. And then after you have that, we're going to sculpt the lei. And so to do the lei, I dipped a bead of white acrylic. So I had white and then I dipped it into a really pretty purple. So that'll give you a variegated purple and white mix. And just pull that out into a lumpy line, just like so. And then take a dotting tool and just kind of manipulate the acrylic to give it a very vague flowery type look. Then before the lei is 100% set, you're going to pick it up off that nail form backing very carefully with your fingers. And then we're going to attach it. It actually is 100% set up. It's just so thin that the acrylic is still kind of bendy. But then we're going to attach it to Mr. Olaf just like so. And then after you have it on there like that, if you want to, you may want to stick on a little bit of nail glue to hold those ends in place so that they don't come off. But then we're going to take and sculpt the foot that is stationary on Olaf's body, because one of them is sticking up off to the side and like he's doing an arabesque, and one of them is just standing on the sandy floor. So there's some nail glue, glue that foot that's sticking up to the side down, and then we're just going to continue gluing different pieces of Olaf together. So the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to be gluing his nose into that hole in his face. So I dipped my little nose into some nail glue that I have next to me, and then take some more of your orange acrylic, and we're going to be filling out the shape of the nose so it isn't quite so flat on top. So just place another bead down and then create some more dimension to it. The great thing with working with acrylic is that you can create these bases and then build them up off of it, which just gives you some more freedom to really create extremely dimensional designs. Glue his arms in place like he's got his arms up like he's having the best day of his life. And then we're going to take and glue our little nose onto, or the little sunglasses onto the little nose. Just glue them in place. If you want to sculpt temples for the glasses, you are free to do so. I decided not to. I figured it looks really cute as it is, and while the temples would add something, I didn't feel it was necessary. I also sculpted his teeth with white, and then with more of the brown acrylic, the same color I used for his arms, I'm going to be sculpting 3 little twig hairs coming off the top of his head. If you didn't want to sculpt them with acrylic because they are so thin and there's not that much dimension to them where it really makes a difference, a little bit of brown paint would also do the job for that. So now to sculpt the grass skirt, we're going to go back to our nail form backing and pat out a rectangle, a very thin rectangle of a grass green acrylic. So just pat that out into a nice rectangular shape that's approximately the width of Olaf's body. And then take the tip of your brush and just drag it through the acrylic so that it kind of breaks it up into little grass pieces, except for on the top of it, you want that to stay solid. And then after you have that, I'm just going to take off some of that extra length of acrylic and keep playing around with it until it sets up and until you're happy with it. And then you can pick it up off the nail form backing and wrap it around Olaf's body. And as you can see, mine isn't quite wide enough because you can see a little bit of his side off the one. So then I'm just going to take some more of that green acrylic that I used and fill in the grass skirt where I need to, a little bit on both sides just to make sure that it looks like completely wraps around him. So now I'm going to be shading and highlighting Olaf with some acrylic paint. I began with a really light gray color to do some very preliminary shading on him. Nothing too crazy, but just to kind of get your feet wet with the shading process. It's a little bit around his face and then between each snowball. And it's such a light gray, you almost can't tell that it's there in the video, but it just gives a very subtle little bit of shading on him. And then with white paint, I'm going to begin highlighting him. And as you can see, the white paint is significantly brighter than the white acrylic, so those highlights really do show up nice and bright and give him some really nice extra dimension. So whenever you're doing something and you're sculpting a design and you think, well, do I want to paint it or not? It's completely up to you. You won't have to do any of this shading and highlighting on Olaf as I am. But if you decide to, it really does add a lot of extra detail to it, and it doesn't necessarily take much time. So if it's something that you're considering, I generally would encourage you to do so, just to really give it some extra oomph. So I'm going to be doing some highlights on his forehead and around his upper lip and his lower lip. On his teeth, I did some of that white highlighting, and on the different snowballs. And you can take, and after you place some of the acrylic paint down, if you wet your brush and you can just blend it out really easy, it creates some nice soft highlights on it. But considering the fact that Olaf is snow, and snow isn't necessarily completely smooth, if your white highlights look a little bit almost spotted, it works out too. And you can take some bright green, and I add some highlights to the skirt, just to make the little individual grass pieces show up a little bit better. Add some highlights to the glasses and to the coal. Just blend those out as well. Maybe do that with a gray color instead of white so it's not quite so intense. Fill in some highlights and lowlights all around him and keep working. Again, I'm so sorry I'm off camera. I sometimes need to slap myself whenever I do that. Fill in his eyes with that bright white so that they do have that nice vivid kind of stand out, these are my eyes appearance. Add his eyebrows. He looks so weird until this point because I didn't do his eyebrows. So fill in his eyebrows with black. Do a little bit of outlining around his hair. It's so funny how sometimes those little details can really make a huge difference, like the fact that he didn't have eyebrows and he just looked so goofy until that point. I'm going to darken the inside of his mouth a little bit. Some more highlights and lowlights wherever I feel it's necessary. Some tan color on the coconut bra and his arms. Add the straps to the coconut bra with brown paint. Fill in his pupils with black, and then we're going to take some really shiny gel sealer and apply that over the background to make that sky nice and glistening. And then after that's cured, apply some matte top coat over Olaf. And that is it. I absolutely love this little design. Olaf is definitely, to me, the best part of the Frozen franchise, so I absolutely love him. Well, I guess either Olaf or Sven. I don't know. I kind of lend myself towards non-humans, but I love him. I hope you guys like him as much as I do, and don't forget to tag me in any recreations on Facebook or Instagram. I'd love to see them, and I will see you next time. Bye!